I never imagined that a simple routine checkup could turn into the most terrifying sentence of my life. It's strange, because up until that day, I was just an ordinary woman living an ordinary life. Married, mother of two, working, taking care of the house, trying to juggle the chaos of everyday life like anyone else. If you're hearing my voice today, it's because cancer tried to take my life, but it couldn't take my faith. And maybe you're thinking this is just another story of survival. But it's not. Because what I went through can't be explained by medicine, and it's not something you'll find in any book. The truth is, I was given a death sentence. The diagnosis was clear, cold, and left no room for hope. Your cancer is in an advanced stage. Prepare for the worst. And you know what's crazy? I almost believed it. But let me tell you something you may have never heard before. When science says, it's over, God looks down and says, I'm not finished yet. And that's exactly why I'm still here. Because God didn't just heal me. He gave me a new purpose. And if you think this is just a coincidence, I invite you to stay with me, because deep down, this story might be exactly what you needed to hear today. You know, if someone had told me years ago that one day I'd be here, opening up my heart to share this story, I wouldn't have believed it. My name is Stella Scott, I'm 42 years old, I'm American, and I live in Houston, Texas. Up until recently, I lived a life that most people would probably call ordinary. I work as an interior designer, I'm married to David, and I'm the mother of two amazing kids, Layla and Lucas. My days were a mix of routines, work, taking care of the house, spending time with my family, and of course, faith. The kind that was there, but always pushed to the side. I've always believed in God, but, you know how it is, right? That Sunday kind of faith. The kind you place on a shelf and only turn to when life gets hard. I used to pray, I'd say thank you, but if I'm honest, it was never really deep. I was more focused on keeping up with daily life than actually connecting with God on a deeper level. And to be really honest, I never imagined that something would flip my life upside down the way it did. It's strange to look back and realize how we go through life on autopilot, thinking we're in control of everything, until suddenly, life hits you with a harsh dose of reality. And that's exactly how it happened for me, totally unexpected. It was in that moment I sensed that something serious was coming, something that would change my life forever. I remember it like it was yesterday. That day started out just like any other. I woke up, made breakfast, packed my kids' lunchboxes, and went about my routine. But I had a follow-up appointment, a quick visit to pick up some test results that, honestly, I thought would just confirm everything was fine. I walked into Dr. Daniel Wright's office with no idea that, from that moment on, nothing in my life would ever be the same. Dr. Daniel looked me in the eyes, took a deep breath, and even before he said a word, I felt it. This wasn't going to be good news. His words hit like the world suddenly went silent around me. Stella, we found a tumor, and it's already in an advanced stage. At that moment, I felt my legs give out. You know that feeling like the ground is opening up beneath you? It was like everything around me was falling apart right before my eyes. My mind went completely blank. I tried to focus on what he was saying, about treatment options, survival rates, but it felt like my soul had left my body. The only thing I could think was, this can't be happening, not to me. It was like a punch to the gut. The life I knew stopped right there. In that room. In that exact moment. And without even realizing it, a question started echoing inside me. Now what? God, where are you? As much as I wanted to be strong, the truth is, my world fell apart. I walked out of that doctor's office completely numb. On the way home, everything felt like it was moving in slow motion. People passed by, cars honked, but to me, it was like none of it existed. My heart was racing, my mind was screaming. No. This can't be real, there has to be some mistake, they must have gotten it wrong. But at the same time, a cold, paralyzing fear was taking over me. When I got home, I locked myself in the bedroom and, for the first time in my life, I let myself fall apart. I cried non-stop. It was a heavy, suffocating kind of cry, one that came from deep inside my soul. Despair wrapped itself around me in a way I had never felt before. You know that fear that freezes you? The fear of dying, of not seeing your kids grow up, of not being here for your family. I kept asking, God, why? Why me? What did I do to deserve this? And even though I tried to convince myself it was all just a nightmare, reality hit hard. It felt like a dark shadow was hovering over my heart, whispering that I wouldn't make it, that this was the end. And it's crazy how, in moments like that, your mind becomes a battlefield. Faith felt far away, and fear kept getting louder. But little did I know, something much greater was about to happen. If it was devastating for me, imagine having to tell the people you love. I still remember the moment I sat down in the living room, looked into David's eyes, my husband, and I just couldn't hold back the tears. He held my hands, waiting for me to say anything but that. And when I finally said, "Babe, it's cancer. And it's serious," it was like his world came to a complete stop too. His reaction was a mix of shock, denial, and that quiet kind of panic, you know? David is the strong, protective type, but that day, I saw him fall apart. As for my kids, Layla and Lucas, I had no idea how to even begin explaining it to them. How do you look into your children's eyes and tell them you might not be around to watch them grow up? And my best friend, Rachel, oh, she tried to stay strong, tried to comfort me. But I could see in her eyes the same fear I was carrying inside. In the days that followed, the whole atmosphere at home changed. There was this silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind filled with uncertainty. It felt like we were all trying to stay strong, on the outside. But on the inside, each of us was fighting our own battle. And even though we didn't know it yet, God was already beginning to move the pieces. In a way I never could have imagined. It was one of those nights, when you just can't sleep. I was alone in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing, with my heart completely shattered. And in that moment, something inside me cried out louder than the fear. I dropped to my knees, something I hadn't done in a long time. And with no fancy words, no rehearsed prayers, all I could say was, God, help me. I don't know what to do, please, help me. It was a raw, broken prayer, you know the kind. Full of tears, sobs, and even questions. I poured it all out, my pain, my fears, my anger, my weakness. In that moment, I wasn't just praying, I was having a real, honest conversation with God like never before. And even though I didn't hear a voice or see a vision, I felt something that words can't explain. A peace that made no sense in the middle of such a storm. And right there, on my knees, with tears streaming down my face, I realized that this was the beginning of a journey. One that wouldn't just be about healing my body, but healing my soul. And let me tell you, I had no idea what was still ahead. But that night, I understood one thing. If I was going to fight, I wasn't going to fight alone. My first day of chemotherapy, oh, that's a day I'll never forget. Only those who've been through it know what it's like to walk into a cold room, lined with chairs, each one holding someone fighting their own battle with cancer. The nurse smiled, trying to be kind, but deep down, I could see that mix of compassion and sadness in her eyes. And me? I was terrified, pretending to be brave while fear was eating me up inside. After the first few sessions, the side effects hit fast. Nausea, extreme fatigue, body aches, and little by little, I started to see my hair fall out. Every strand left on the pillow felt like a piece of my identity was slipping away. You know, it's not just hair. It's like the illness screams in your face, I'm here, and I'm real. And honestly, there were so many times I looked in the mirror and asked, "Who are you now, Stella?" But even in the middle of that storm, something started to light up inside me. A deep desire not to give up. I remember one day, holding a handful of hair in my hands. I looked up and said, "God, I don't know how, but I'm going to fight. I won't let this define me." Little did I know, that would be the first of many serious conversations between me and him. I'll be honest with you, there was a day, right in the middle of it all, when I just broke. You know those days when you wake up so weak, so drained, that even breathing feels hard? I looked at myself in the mirror, thin, bald, pale. And I asked, what's the point of all this? Where is God now? I had been trying to be strong, praying, believing. But that day, all I could do was cry and wonder if he was really listening. It was one of the darkest days of my life. The pain wasn't just physical, it was deep in my soul. It felt like there was this deafening silence coming from heaven. And anyone who's been through this knows. You pray, you wait for an answer, a sign, anything. But sometimes, God's silence feels crushing. And in that silence, the dark thoughts start screaming. Just give up. You're not going to make it. You're not getting out of this. And for a moment, I almost believed that lie. Almost. Because even without understanding, there was a small voice deep inside me, barely a whisper, saying, "Hold on, Stella. This is not the end." And little did I know, God was already preparing something that would completely change the course of my story. It was just another morning, one of those days when I barely had the strength to get out of bed. I was at the hospital, waiting for another round of chemotherapy, when a woman I had never seen before walked up to me. She seemed different. There was a calm look in her eyes, a gentle smile on her face, and she was holding a small Bible in her hands. Without even asking my name, she sat down next to me and said, "God sent me to tell you, this sickness is not unto death, but so that his name will be glorified through your life." In that moment, I froze. It was the kind of thing you just can't explain. That woman, Mary Barnes, as I later found out, started saying things no one could have known unless they had seen deep into my life. She spoke about prayers I had whispered alone in my room. Words that had come out of my mouth when no one else was around. It shook me in a way that still brings tears to my eyes just thinking about it. She held my hands, prayed with me right there in the middle of that room, and said, "God has chosen you to live. You will not die. There's a mission waiting for you after this." And let me tell you, even though my body was still weak, something inside me stood up in that moment. I knew I wasn't fighting alone anymore. It felt like God had sent a message straight from heaven. And from that day on, something began to shift deep within me. After that supernatural encounter, I realized I couldn't rely solely on the doctor's strength, or my own. It was time to dive into the only source that could truly sustain me, the Word of God. So I started reading the Bible like never before. And honestly, it felt like God was speaking directly to me through every page. Verses I had overlooked before now seemed to shout hope straight into my heart. One of the scriptures that touched me the most was Isaiah 41 verse 10. "Do not fear, for I am with you. "Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." It honestly felt like that verse had been written just for me. Every time fear crept in, I would cling to those words like a life raft in the middle of a storm. And the more I fed on the word, the more I realized that this battle wasn't just physical, it was spiritual too. I started listening to worship music, doing daily devotionals, and writing down prayers in a journal. A journal I still have to this day as a memorial of my journey with God. And believe me, that became fuel for my soul. And little by little, I started to notice, something was shifting inside my home as well. You know what's truly amazing? While God was doing a work inside of me, He also started transforming the people around me. My husband, David, he's always been a good man, hardworking, committed, dedicated. But to be honest, his relationship with God was pretty distant at best. Still, when he saw me seeking God so intensely, right in the middle of the pain, he started to wonder. If she's finding strength there, maybe I need that too. I'll never forget one night when I woke up in the middle of the night and found David in the living room, on his knees. He didn't even know how to pray properly, but he was there, talking to God in his own way, asking for strength, asking for a miracle. My kids, Layla and Lucas, started asking questions too, about faith, about God, about hope. And as a family, we started a new routine at home, family prayers, Bible reading, worship music playing throughout the day. That house, which had once been filled with fear, was now being filled with faith. And I realized, God wasn't just healing my body. He was restoring my whole family. And honestly, that, to me, was already a miracle happening right before my eyes. But still, not everything would be easy. In fact, the darkest days of my life were still ahead. The truth is, my friend, no matter how strong your faith is, there are days when the storm feels like it's going to swallow you whole. And that's exactly how I felt when, right in the middle of my treatment, my health suddenly took a turn for the worse. A severe infection sent me straight to the hospital. High fever, unbearable pain, a body that could barely fight anymore, and the doctors, well, they looked genuinely worried. Dr. Daniel was honest. "Stella, your body is shutting down." I remember lying there in that hospital bed, surrounded by machines, and honestly, I thought that was it. The fear of death wrapped around me in a way I can't even describe. I stared at the beeping monitors and wondered, is this how it ends? Am I never going home again? Will I never hug my kids or see my husband smile? The room was silent, except for the sound of the equipment, and my whispered prayers, begging God for help. And to be completely honest with you, there were moments when the only thing I could say was, "Lord, if this is your will, take me in peace. But if there's still hope, please, give me one more chance." It was there, in the valley of the shadow of death, that I realized. Either I trusted God completely, or I wouldn't make it through. And little did I know, even in the silence, a miracle was already on its way. It was strange, because there was no thunder, no light from the sky, no voices from beyond. There was no spectacle. But there was something different. As the days passed, little by little, my body began to respond. The fever started to subside. The tests began to show a slight, but steady, improvement. Dr. Daniel came in every day, furrowed his brow at the reports, and said, "This isn't what we expected, but it's improving." And deep down, I already knew. This wasn't just medicine, it was God at work, even without fanfare. I truly believe that God works a lot in silence. We want the impact, the instant miracle, the movie scene. But sometimes, He chooses to heal drop by drop, step by step. while testing our patience, our faith, and our trust. I started to feel strength returning. It wasn't just my body responding. It was my spirit being restored. I woke up wanting to live. Do you know what that is? It's when the miracle begins even before your body understands. And with every small step forward, I smiled. Not because everything was fixed, but because I knew I was walking out of the valley. And you know what's the most beautiful part of all this? The peace that started to visit me, even without explanation. A peace that didn't come from good news, but from God's presence in that hospital room. And as that peace grew, something even more surprising started happening in the next tests. I'll never forget the day Dr. Daniel walked into the room holding my latest test results. He looked stunned. He sat down in the chair next to my bed, looked at me, took a deep breath, and said, "Stella, I don't know how to explain this. All the numbers have changed. The tumor has shrunk in a way that, technically, doesn't make sense." And me, fighting back tears, I could only whisper, "Oh, it makes sense. It makes sense to heaven." He kept showing me the scans, pointing to numbers and images. Trying, using the most scientific reasoning he could, to make sense of what was happening. But I already knew exactly what was behind that unexplainable improvement. It wasn't medicine. It wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. It was God, breaking through the limits of human logic to show that when He decides to move, no diagnosis can stand in His way. And believe me, it hadn't been easy getting to that point. Every victory felt like a battle won in the middle of a war zone. But in that moment, I understood something. Man's verdict is not God's verdict. And while the doctors were searching for answers in their books, I had already found mine, in the Bible, in faith, and in prayer. And it was right then that I realized my fight was no longer just about saving my life. Something new was being born inside me. You know, when you look back and realize you survived something that, humanly speaking, was impossible, something shifts inside you. And that's exactly what started to happen to me. As my body kept responding better and better, my heart began to fill with a feeling I just couldn't ignore anymore. I realized I didn't survive just to go back to the same life as before. God was giving me a new mission, something much bigger than I ever imagined. I started to see that my pain, my process, my tears, they weren't for nothing. While many still saw me as a patient in recovery, I already saw myself as someone being prepared for something greater. God was teaching me that living isn't just about breathing, paying bills, and going through the motions. Living is about having a purpose. And in that moment, I understood that if God had brought me this far, He didn't want me to keep this story to myself. That's when a fire started to burn inside me, a desire that grew stronger every day. To share hope. To share faith. To remind others that when everything says no, God still has the final word. And honestly, I had no idea where to start. But one thing I knew for sure. My life would never be the same again. And right there, in the middle of that new beginning, one of the most anticipated, and most emotional, moments of this entire journey was still yet to come. The day of the final appointment, oh, just thinking about it still makes my heart race. I walked into the doctor's office with that nervous feeling in my stomach, one only someone who's been through something like this can truly understand. Dr. Daniel was sitting there with a serious look on his face, holding my latest test results. He looked at me, took a deep breath, and said, "Stella, there's no sign of the disease. You are officially cancer-free." In that moment, I couldn't hold it in. The tears came. But they weren't from sadness. They were from relief, from gratitude, from victory. You know that kind of cry that feels like it cleanses your soul? That's exactly what it was. I stood up from the chair and hugged Dr. Daniel. He was visibly moved and said, "I see so many cases come through here, and honestly, some things can only be called a miracle. And you, Stella, you are a miracle." Right then, I couldn't think of anything except giving thanks. Thanking God. Thanking my family. Thanking the people who prayed for me. And even thanking the pain, because it taught me more than any book ever could. When I walked out of that office, it felt like the sky was bluer, the wind softer. I hugged David and my kids and told them, "It's over. The battle is over." But deep inside, I knew that in truth, another journey was just beginning. Because when God rescues you from death, it's because He has a life of abundance waiting for you. And I was ready. Ready to live it. The truth is, when you come out of a battle like that, you never come out the same. I looked in the mirror, and even though my hair was starting to grow back, I could see that I was no longer the same Stella. The woman who once lived on autopilot, always racing against the clock. Worried about little things, she was gone. I didn't see life the same way anymore. Every sunrise now felt like a miracle, a gift, a new beginning. You know those things, getting annoyed at traffic, long lines, daily frustrations? They just stopped mattering. I learned that life is fragile, and we waste so much time focusing on things that don't. Now, all I want is to live with purpose. To live for what really matters. To love more, forgive more, hug more. And most of all, to never again spend a single second away from God's presence. And you know, it's kind of amazing how sometimes God allows us to walk through certain valleys. Not to break us, but to rebuild us. I'm not the same anymore. And honestly, I don't want to be. Because now I understand, my life isn't just mine. It belongs to God. And He brought me out of that valley, so I could fulfill something far greater than I ever imagined. After everything I went through, staying silent just wasn't an option anymore. The voice that was once silenced by fear and pain, had now become a testimony. I started small, sharing my story at church, giving my testimony during prayer meetings. And little by little, it began to grow. Invitations started coming in, to speak at hospitals, to join support groups, to record videos, podcasts. And every time I shared, I could feel it. God was using my pain to bring healing to others. And you know, it's surreal to see how God can turn our valley into a ministry. People I had never met would come up to me, tears in their eyes, saying, "Stella, hearing your story brought my faith back to life. I was about to give up, but now I believe God can do it in my life too." And honestly, that means more to me than anything else. Because I realized, surviving wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. Today, when I hold a microphone, or when I look into the eyes of someone who feels like they've hit rock bottom, I don't speak as someone who's just heard about God. I speak as someone who's seen Him. Someone who's felt Him. Someone who was lifted up from the dust. And because of that, every word that comes out of my mouth carries a truth that comes straight from heaven. But still, there was something missing. Something that, for me, became the greatest mission of my life. Today, I understand that God didn't heal me just so I could go back to living a normal life. No. He kept me here with a very clear mission. To be a voice of hope, a light in the darkness. A living proof that God is greater than any diagnosis, any verdict, any impossibility. And let me tell you, I take that seriously. Wherever there is pain, wherever someone is on the edge of giving up. That's exactly where I want to be. I started using my social media to share words of faith. I created online prayer groups, began visiting hospitals, walking into rooms filled with tears, and leaving seeds of hope behind. And you know what? Every time I look into the eyes of someone going through the same valley I once walked through, I see a version of myself. And I say to them, hey, God hasn't finished your story yet. If He raised me up, He can raise you up too. And to be honest, I know this mission goes beyond my own life. Because when you experience a miracle, you have a responsibility to become a miracle in someone else's life. And that's exactly what I've chosen to be. A messenger of hope. A woman who carries her scars, not as marks of pain, but as living testimonies that the God who heals, restores, and transforms is still in control of everything. If you've made it this far, I want to tell you something. And it's not a cliché, it's the truth. You can experience a miracle too. Maybe today you're in the valley, feeling stuck, just like I felt in that cold hospital bed. But God didn't bring you to this video by accident. He brought you here because there's still hope. And if you've heard my story and felt something stir in your heart, then listen closely. The same God who lifted me up can lift you up too. But now I need to ask you, what will you do with everything you've just heard? Will you just turn off this video and go back to the same routine? Or will you let God start something new inside you? Because yes, miracles do happen. But they begin when we decide to trust, to surrender, and to take the first step. And sometimes, that step is simply bending your knees and saying, God, I'm here, help me. It's that simple. And if this story touched you in any way, leave a comment below. Tell me, have you been through something similar? Are you going through a battle right now? Let me pray for you. Because together, we don't just survive. We bloom, even in the midst of pain. And never forget this. The final word comes from heaven.